So, you learn a lot by getting something right or close to right on the ground and getting on and then seeing a similarity or a big difference. And then you go, okay, it teaches us to identify what may be the problem. And that's all I do at clinics, is I say to people, well, that works really good when you're in front of your horse, but when you did it from behind the wither, the horse was really nervous. So it's not the fact that the horse doesn't know how to lead, it's the fact that the horse is still frightened of people at a certain angle on its eye.
Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Barnes.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Welcome to the new year and a new season of Mark Langley Horse Training Tips. We're going to start this episode by looking at highly anxious horses and how we can help them. The first question, Mark, comes from Marianne, and she has a 4-year-old warm blood mare who she says her mind is like a 6-lane freeway where everybody is an overhaul. She's got a very high level of anxiety. She never seems to be able to relax. So in her stable, she's always scratching the floor, picking up her feet, stomping. When she gets a thought, she's hyper-focused, and she finds it really hard to get her away from it. So this mare she's had for 2 years, and when they have to trim her feet or do something with her with a farrier, they have to control her by holding her ears. So we're guessing that's an ear twitch. She's very curious, but she doesn't want to be touched. So touching any of her sensitive areas has been a really slow process. And when she's in season, she urinates easily. Marianne describes her as a release hunter, and she seems to have a hard thought when she's around people. She can trail ride her alone on a long rein, but when too much is happening, her mind seems to go offline. She's done a lot of work inspired by your ideas, Mark, but she's still struggling with her. And although this lady, Marianne, has started many horses and ridden many difficult horses without problems, this one is a challenge for her. So she's turning to you to find out what she might be able to do to help her and progress.
Yeah, there's a few things in there, Marion, but I'm glad you've come on board, and I hope along the way I could offer you some help. But the first two things that I want to sort of you to think about is just in the question there, the previous owner that had her, when the farrier came, they had to sort of ear twitch her to handle her feet or trim her. That sort of flags up quite a red flag. And then, in new areas and stuff, she's very hyper-focused and nervous and can't process all the things that are going on around her. So there's horses that are very comfortable around people and handling and pick up their feet softly and in a comfortable environment. They can be fairly calm and fairly, soft at the things that we're doing with them. And then when they go out, they can be a little bit like overwhelmed by new environments and hyper-focused. But by the sounds of it with her, there's 2 areas in there that's really a big problem. And one of the areas is she still, I think, has trouble with people and the way she's handled. So basically, what you've got to look into is all the things that she doesn't understand, like, when she leads up into a person and things like that. Is she comfortable when a person walks into her? Is she comfortable? If you handle down a front leg or hind leg, is she comfortable? So basically, if she's not comfortable and connected around people, what's going to be happening is, she may as well just have goblins leading her around, and then those goblins take her into a scary environment. So by the seams of it, she needs to be a lot softer and more connected around people. So that part of it needs to be addressed. So, get her good at leading, get her trusting people walking in on her, get her to give her alternatives when you're handling her and in nervous situations, So like I like to get horses to move a little, so I might lead them up a little when I'm trying to handle their hind feet and stuff like that. So they walk up to me, they walk their rib cage to me, and a lot of touch and go, come back in again, and just get her comfortable with the handling side of things so that she's very soft around people and trusting. And that could be a whole process of going right back to the start in sort of, even in, like, if you were watching videos, you could look at the sort of young horse stuff, because there's a lot of little things in there you might find as missing links in her handling. And I wouldn't even worry about the new environment. Just work on the things that you can see and feel that are missing in her, and the things that she doesn't understand, the simple things. Even when you ride her in a safe place, does she follow the left rein right? Does she follow the right rein right? Does she feel good about those things? Is she comfortable with the reins? Is she comfortable with the legs? Because all those things that you're applying, you're going to have to apply to her when she's in a new environment. And once if a horse's cup's already partly full because of the scariness of the things that we're applying, then she's got to cope with those and all the new things that she's got to process in a new environment. So then they get to hyper focusing, fixating on things, and they really get sort of, stuck. So the next stage of it would be working on, when you're working with her, every time she starts to destinate or fixate, you've got to do something big enough to get her to let go of that primary strong thought that's causing anxiety. So, whether it be a pop of a leg or step back, I don't know, stepping back might be not enough to get her to change her thought. You might have to do something big where you bang a flag on your leg. And when she resets and she starts to process you and the environment that she's in, that's what the place that you want her. And with horses at clinics, I do a lot of that. Like some horses over a longer clinic, I'll spend a lot of my time getting them in a frame of mind ready for information and learning. So back to the start of the answer that I was talking about, the handling side of things. If you're in a calm environment and she's still hyper focusing and things like that, well, before you do that handling, you might have to get her to let go of those strong destination thoughts or those gazes that she gets. And when she sort of resets and comes back in, then maybe offer a bit of a connection and teach her to not be elsewhere in her mind. So basically, every time she has a strong thought, you do something to get her to let go of that strong thought. And over time, they get you create a new habit where they start to process the environment that they're in, not just kind of block out and fixate somewhere else. But you've got to really help them with that one. So you might have to do that first and then go through all the things that she doesn't understand or she's nervous about. And then the next stage is taking her into more scary environments that challenge her and doing the same thing, But I guess what you'll have then is a horse that understands what you're asking a lot better, but also you'll have a horse that that you've started to reprogram in a way that says, okay, I can let go of those fixations and I can process. And that's when you take them into a new environment, because they're more in a processing frame of mind. You can slow down and let them process, and you'll see all the things that maybe made them fix. So basically what happens if a horse goes, oh, there's something over there that's really scary, I'm just going to avoid it or look somewhere else. Or what may happen is, because you've taught her to let go of the strong thoughts somewhere else, is you'll watch them look and be nervous of the things that that concerns them, and then you wait a little and let them process those things and let them and even if they have to kind of move away from those things, you give them the opportunity to do that a little bit, so they're in charge of their own mind and body, so they can make decisions around scary things, and then they feel more empowered when you take them into those new environments. So there's a whole bunch of things to look at, and that's the hardest thing about training. I wish I could say, if you just got to, get her to let go of a strong thought, that would be it. But no, I think there's a lot more. There's get her to let go of those strong thoughts so she's centered and she's processing you and the environment that she's in, and then go through all the things that you can control, and find the things that she doesn't understand or she's frightened of, that you can control. And that's the handling, the feet picking up, the leading, following the reins, the following the legs, all that sort of stuff. They're the things that you've got to go through and itemise each one and figure out which ones create more concern, which ones are okay, and work on getting them all so they work well.
The thing that struck me, Mark, was that she's only 4 and she's got all these, it sounds like she's sort of living in this awful environment for her. She has to go in a stable that she absolutely hates, and she's, can you help a horse that's that sort of that bad at such a young age? Is it easy to help her? Is it like going back to treating her as if she was a young horse?
4 years old is not very old, and it's not a lot of mileage. It's not a lot of emotional mileage and not a lot of physical mileage on a horse. So what I mean by mileage is the more miles you do in life, I suppose, the more experiences you have and the more you can deal with situations. But for her, she's been thrown into, a war-torn environment, and she's only got a water pistol to help her, really, at the end of the day. So some young horses born into stables and born into certain environments can cope with certain human things. Some can't, but there's so many things in her environment that I don't think she's got the tools to understand. And being 4, she's still learning. Everything you're showing her, she's still learning. And also, she's the one that had the stallion, that was with the stallion, yeah. So by the sounds of it, even her herd environment that she was in traumatized her a bit. So, she always had a real, bully sort of horse that she was with. She was constantly on edge and on alert. Like if you grew up with people that were constantly poking and bullying you, you'd be an edgy sort of person in any environment with any horses, because you'd see those horses as a potential threat. So the well-balanced horses emotionally with other horses are usually grown up in a herd where they've had a balance of horses and they've had room to get away from those really narky, annoying horses, and they've also had other horses that they can spend time with, that they can become comfortable with, and they learn that there's always alternatives when there's threats. So there could be always a really nasty horse in a herd, but in a big enough area, the horses can relieve themselves of that nasty horse and always have an alternative. Whereas some horses grow up with a nasty horse close by, but they just can't get away from that annoyance because their paddocks are too small, things like that. So then they take that, whether it be bad weaning, the paddocking with other horses, and they take that into their learning environment, and it stays with them, just like people. If you've been beaten up when you're a kid, you're going to have troubles when you're an adult, So those things just carry through with horses and all of. But it takes a person to come along and say, hey, I can give you alternatives to your anxiety. I can show you pathways. I can empower you through education to really help them. And I think that's important.
So what about putting her in the stable? Is that something that you should be avoiding or helping her through?
Well, like I said before, it's like, how many tools does she have, and what can she process? I know with a lot of people, they have to stable their horses, and it's kind of hard, but she's in an environment that she's obviously very uncomfortable with. So I would treat stabling like teaching the horse to load. I think I got a video, it was just a year or two ago, and it was just a talk over video of a lady, and she lives in an area where it gets quite cold, so the horse has to be stabled, especially when the big storms come through in the wintertime. And this horse, I looked at it in the stable and I said, well, don't just take it into the stable, teach it how to process a stable, which means it could be the barn sort of setup that you walk into the stables through. It could be stopping her there and getting her to process everything and teaching her to walk softly in there and slow everything down and find out. Like if you were loading a horse onto a float, there's a point where you're going to feel a brace and a resistance and a hesitation or a nervousness in a horse. And if you feel that, you know that horse is starting to go, I'm starting to get overwhelmed with all this, and then you can take them out and say, try again, until they can realise that they can go in and out of that thing and treat that whole going into stables and that environment with stables and other horses as a loading experience, until she's a lot softer going into the stables. And then if she can process and not gaze and not bounce around at 5,000 miles an hour in a mind when she goes into there, then take her out and bring her back in again and do that for a little while and help her process the stables and that environment a lot more.
Okay, and we're going to put some links for some videos for you to watch as well, Marianne, for that. The next question, Mark, is from Jean Marie, and it's very similar, I suppose, in the sense that this horse is very, very anxious. It's a particularly Gazy horse, and it's a horse that Jean Marie rides just once a week, and she's been riding it for about half a year. What she's finding is that her horse is super, super stary at stuff. Sometimes she's got no idea what on earth he's looking at. She can't see anything, but there might be a small noise or something that's different. And he stares obsessively with pricked ears. And almost nothing that she can do will help him once the thought is there. She's tried backing up, shoulder in, and other manoeuvres. He does them, but he responds only with his feet, not his mind. His focus stays away and the tension builds up. And so his worry sort of builds up there as well. And she ends up feeling quite insecure. And then she's got to try and find a way of relaxing him, turning him around, or dismounting. So her question is, what are your recommendations for this type of problem? Where should she start in order to build a tool that's going to help both of them in this situation? Should she start on the ground with the flag and the rope, teaching him to change his focus? And will that work later on when she touches the reins?
So very similar sort of thing in those two questions. But I'm just going to tell a little story before I give you the answer. But there might be an answer in the little story of a horse at a clinic that I worked, because as with the last question, you have to go back through education and find out how the horse processes information presented by people. And I find a lot of the problems I'm coming up with in horses that are similar to this at clinics and things like that are the way the horse has been taught to process information has also helped them become fixators and gazers and things like this. And so I'm going to go to this story. There's a lady in Queensland a while ago at a clinic, and she had a horse, a little Arab horse that became quite intensely focused, very much the same as what you've sort of talked about in that question, as I'm fixating on everything. There's gremlins hiding in the bushes. Where are they? So when it started to lead, it would just march out, but just focus on everything and fixate and just was kind of like on overload. And she got to a point that she's, I've got to stop. It's not getting any better. I can't help this horse. I can't get into its head. So there was a cancellation on a second clinic. So she managed to fit into 2 clinics, which was good, because by the end of the first clinic, I think it was a three-day clinic, we made a bit of progress, but we hadn't quite got that sort of change of thought that we needed for that horse to process better. But in the second clinic, it made some really good changes where the horse just really started to process and become soft and, walk out on a loose rein nice. And I asked her some of the styles of training that she's taught the horse, and she taught the horse to look at pressure. She wasn't really aware that she taught the horse to look at pressure, but I guess what was happening was when she put a stick somewhere, the horse had to move away from the stick, so it had to look at the stick, move away, and then she put a stick somewhere else and it moved away from that stick, and then she put pressure in front of it and moved away over there. So this horse was so tuned to looking for pressure that it became paranoid with its eyes. So basically it had so much paranoia that every time you'd move, you'd adjust, you'd do something sort of on the ground, it'd be looking for where the danger was. Because it was a release hunter, it would think that if I move away from the danger, the pressure's going to stop. So it started to look for danger in its groundwork all the time. So its eyes weren't there to process the environment. They weren't there to go towards its thoughts. They were only there in groundwork to look for where the pressure is so it can move away from where that pressure is. So that's why I call it, it becomes eye paranoia. So then I said to her, so when you ride out, you've got this horse that's paranoid, that's learning to look for danger that it has to move off. Now you're going to ride that horse out into the out into the bush, and instead of learning that it can process and trust everything that you're asking it, it's become paranoid of things that it has to look out for, because in groundwork, that's all it's ever done. And so once I adjusted that in her and adjusted the way the horse thought, then basically when things started to make good changes, it started to process everything around it really well. So the reason I told that story is just for everyone out there to think about, have I taught my horse to look for danger in groundwork and move away from danger all the time, or have I taught it to process its environment and go towards its thoughts? If you have a horse that's looking for the stick, looking for the pressure, if it's hyper-focused at liberty, all those things, you're setting your horse up to be an eye paranoid horse that fixates on things and gets paranoid about all the things that could happen out there. I'm not saying that's the only thing that's going to cause that. I'm just saying if you have a horse that's already like an Arab who's already a looker, who's already looks for danger, if you've taught them to fixate on things, move away from danger in training, it will make them a lot harder to help when you need to get their thoughts to help them through. So just think about that as well in everything you see in your groundwork. The next thing, basically what we did to help this horse, and this will be the answer that'll help your horse, is the first thing I started to work on was to trying to get her attention when she was fixating and just gazing off. Okay, so basically, if she had a strong thought, I'd say let go of that thought, just like the other horse, just let go of that thought. When the thoughts come back, I try to present something in there that made her connect to. So I put my hand out, something like that, so she can breathe and just sort of center with us. So what I started to do was just become a grounded place that she could come and stand around. And if she thought she had to kind of look off at something, then I said, don't, let go of that. I'm not trying to say focus on me. I don't encourage people to do that because it's more personal. I just want to say let go of that thought. What they do after that is usually, well, what are they going to do after that? Usually they'll start to sort of process the environment they're in. So I don't want to get a horse to stop looking away just to look at me, because that could be another hyper-focus, couldn't it? So the reason I just say to people, just teach your horse to let go of the fixation, is because I just want the horse to come back and process the environment that it's in and I'm in. And then if it wants to process me and connect with me at the same time, well, that's something that I'll try and promote if I can. But basically it's there so the horse can feel better and process and feel that it's empowered to make decisions and be in that environment safely. So basically from there, you're starting a new way of thinking in that horse, that it doesn't need to fixate on those things. And sometimes that takes some time to get a horse to get in a new frame of thinking, that it doesn't have to fixate on things in the distance. Once you've taught the horse, or you've taught the horse that, and that becomes more of a habit, and it almost becomes like a psychological thing that they can tap into a lot easier, like a neuro pathway sort of thing, then basically what's going to happen is you'll start to say, when I pull on a rein, go towards your thoughts, or when I pull on a rein, let go of the outside thought and follow the feel of the rein, which means change your thoughts. So that's why we teach horses to go towards their thoughts, is because it teaches them to go towards your thoughts. You have to let go of something else to go towards your thoughts, to focus on what you want to do or where you're going. So horses are very good at processing their environment, but still having their primary focus on their task. So if their primary focus is on all the dangers around, and then their secondary focus is on the task, it's not doing a very good job of, doing what you're asking them to do. So basically you're trying to say, let go of that thought, follow the rein, follow the rope, whatever it is. So whatever aid you're using to help your horse, so it could be leading. When you pull on that rope, the horse lets go of the backward thought or the gaze and comes through with its thoughts and follows that rope. So basically it's choosing to follow that rope, whichever way that rope goes, and then that rope becomes the rein. So if you think of that in your riding, you get that working really well in a safe place. So then you expose your horse to fairly new, just the edge of a new environment, and when they start to gaze off, you use those tools that you're taught. I pick up a rein, let go of that thought, follow the feel of the rein, and then you slowly expose them in increments into new environments. And if you throw them too far into a strong environment, you can't get them back, or you've learned something. Maybe take them halfway out of that environment and see if you can get them back. But basically, before you take them into the mosh pit and the scary places, you have to have a way of getting in and saying, let go of that. Okay, so basically you get that working really well, and then you slowly expose them until it doesn't matter how far you take them, how big the environment is. They have a pathway that they trust through the feel of your guidance, but also that becomes a habit, that they process the environment that they're in, and they don't just fixate on things off in the distance.
Okay, so those tools that she uses on the ground are going to translate into the rein. So the leading that you were talking about, getting the thoughts to come forward, that will eventually translate to when you pick up a rein, the thoughts will follow through. and redirect.
So what you're looking for, the reason why you pick up a rope on the ground, you're standing on the ground, you're looking at your horse, and you're seeing the eye roll, the ear flick, the horse look into a direction, let go of a thought, and you learn for yourself what it looks like, what it feels like, and then you just translate that, or you transfer it, to under saddle. So you just get up under saddle and start to go, am I seeing the same thing? Is the horse following that rein like it's its best friend, or is it bracing and fighting? I had my horse leading really well on the ground. It was following its thoughts really well. And then when I sat on it, I got really nervous and didn't follow the rein. Oh, maybe there's a problem that the horse is still finding it difficult to process someone behind its eyes and ears. So maybe there's education in there that needs to be taught, where the horse needs to learn to trust people behind it a bit more and make better decisions when a person's behind it. So, you learn a lot by getting something right or close to right on the ground and getting on and then seeing a similarity or a big difference. And then you go, okay, it teaches us to identify what may be the problem. And that's all I do at clinics, is I say to people, well, that works really good when you're in front of your horse, but when you did it from behind the wither, the horse was really nervous. So it's not the fact that the horse doesn't know how to lead, it's the fact that the horse is still frightened of people at a certain angle on its eye.
You mentioned in the last answer there about primary and secondary focus, which brings us into the third question for today. It's from Virginie. She has an off-the-track standard thoroughbred who she's been doing some groundwork exercises with, and I think that you've actually reviewed one of her videos as well. What she's found is that he has a slightly different reaction from one side to the other. So on one side, he has a primary focus and also the secondary focus, in that she can see that he's looking off into the distance, but he is maintaining some kind of awareness on her, which is the secondary focus. But then when she goes to the other side, so when she stands on his left side, there's no secondary focus at all. This means that he's very quickly, she describes it as a way out of the arena. So his full destination, his full attention, his primary focus is off. And therefore, when she asks him to do something, so if she asks for a change of direction, it creates a surprise. And that translates into a strong brace and a refusal to turn. I find this really interesting, that she's managed to break down the effects of the primary and secondary focus, and she's fully understanding how it affects how horses operate. So it's a brilliant explanation, really. But what she'd like to know is, how should she get him to get this secondary focus balanced on the left, so that change of direction can be a bit more flowy and less braced?
I guess one of the holy grails in horse training, fascinated me for years, this sort of stuff, is how a horse can process us on one eye and on the other eye differently, and how they process different things on each eye. And there's never one clear answer with horses. I read in a magazine years ago, I was 20 years ago or so, when I was over in England, and it was, you must lead your horse on the left because they process us and things like that on the left, with the left eye better, and that's why we lead horses on the left. And I'm like, that's interesting, but we ride them equally on both sides. And then we've got to expect them to understand that, but we've always worked on their sort of processing us eye on the left when we lead, and then we've got to ride them, and we've got to put them in floats with things on both sides and have people going past them on both sides, and all sorts of situations. So just because there's a bias in a horse, it doesn't mean we can't try and make them more even, in the sense that they can process things equally as good through their right eye as their left eye, as they switch to their primary side, I suppose. So so some horses don't like us down one side because they're wary of us down one side. Some horses don't like us down one side because we're blocking their gazing eye. Okay, so some horses have a strong eye that they need to kind of check out things, and if you take that eye off them, they feel a little bit vulnerable. And now obviously they feel vulnerable because the person still is a bit frightening to them, or stressful, or threatening. So around people they feel a bit more vulnerable, so they need that eye to process their environment more. So some horses will constantly put you on one particular eye because they want their other eye to look out for danger. Now, sometimes they don't need that other eye to look out for danger, but sometimes just having a person in their environment makes them need to look. It makes their anxiety go up to a certain level that they need to look out for danger more. So that's why some horses put you on one side versus the other, is because they want the other eye to look for gremlins. In a nervous kind of horse, a very wary horse, is fully focused on us and it's just so focused on us because they're so frightened, they don't know what to do. They will only put us on their eye that they need to process us on and not the other eye. So they put us on their more confident eye so they can process us on that eye. So there is two reasons why horses might not let us go down one side, okay? And that's what you've got to look at with him is, do you think that he's needing the other eye more and he needs it to process things out there and go towards his thoughts and he just blocks us out? Or is he nervous of you down one side? It's a hard one sometimes to figure out because sometimes it can look a little the same. But fixing it can be very similar. Like each thing can be similar. You can fix it in a similar way. So in the leading by lesson, you've noticed, and it's really good you've noticed it, and you've read between the lines of everything, and that's the only way I've learned anything is through saying, well, hang on, there's a bit of an inconsistency in there. When the horse is doing this is not happening, but when I'm on the other side, it is. And it's really good you're identifying those things. So what I would do on the bad eye, I can't remember if it's the left or right one now, but so the one that he's kind of blocking you out and just hyper focusing out the other eye, is when you do a leading by lesson, and this is anyone out there that's got a wild horse or a horse that's never been handled much, anyone that's done any leading by lessons, this will be a key to some of the handling the hind feet, everything. So basically, you're not leading a horse by just to go out and explore. You're also leading it by to learn how to process equally on both sides. So the speed that you lead your horse past you is the speed of when that horse has finally got even, I suppose. So basically on one side, on the good side, you could lead the horse to here so his eye goes right past you and he could have his eye side on to you and he could be still nice and soft and process the environment, process you and be fine. But on the other eye, you'll get to a certain point and you'll see the change happen. And sometimes it's when they lose you with the outside eye, the change will start to happen. So if two eyes are coming past you, then all of a sudden they get further past you with that side, and that's when they start to destinate. That's where you stop. You don't take them any further and you back them off a bit and say, come again. And then when they start to harden up and they start to block out or destinate, or for the nervous ones, they start to get really frightened, you just back them off and say, come in again. So, or come by again. And you just soften them there right at the point of brace where they start to change and have quite a big emotional change. And then you just back them into that, back them out again, and then ask again. And then when you see that strong change, whether it be a nervous, I'm a bit wary, I don't want to come any further, or I'm going to go on to destinate and just march off out through my outside eye, then you stop and back off again. And you slowly wean them past you. And basically for the horses to just get a strong thought, you teach them to let go of that thought, try again. For the horses that are nervous, that are kind of, you gently, you're working on their processing speed. So you're not leading them into the lion's den in one big hit. You let them go in slowly. And so basically for the nervous horses, it's like stepping on a float. Gee, you're nervous when you put your foot on the float. Step off, try again. Oh, that was a bit softer. Oh, now you're really soft. You can go a little bit further. Yeah. So that's for the nervous horses. For the horses that have strong fixations and just march by, they probably were quite nervous at one stage, but because they were in the mosh pit and obviously an off the track standard bred, have been thrown into the deep end with not a lot of tools sometimes. So basically what they do is they just march through things, just smash through it all and just get it done. And that's their coping mechanism. So you have to slow that coping mechanism right down. So you get one thing right, and then when they soften and they let go of the brace, ask them by. When I'm teaching people to lead horses on floats, it's the same thing. I say, this is a salt pan. Can you see a float behind you? No. Can you see freedom and grass out there? No, this is a salt pan. All you can see in every direction is the same thing. So a salt pan is not much different than closing your eyes and leading your horse. Sometimes close your eyes and feel for where the brace is, and when you feel that brace, just say, there it is. I might have to take them back off that brace and loosen that brace up. And through that feel, you'll get a horse to become equally soft everywhere. And that's what you're going to be looking at. So, and that'll help you out a lot with that one, and for anyone else with the young brumbies and things like that.
So that softness that they then that they get, that they're comfortable with you, then is also going to just affect that balance of that primary focus, and it's going to take it away, because they're just not going to be they're not going to need it, are they? They're comfortable with what you're doing. Okay, so it's a lot of in these answers, and I think you're going to give people a lot to think about, Mark. It's fascinating stuff as always. What I sort of got from your answers is that you've got to give horses tools that work, and then manage their environment and monitor what they can cope with. Then, of course, you bring in those tools as soon as they aren't coping to help them make those better decisions. And it all comes down to the decisions that we make. Of course, that's the irony of it, isn't it? To help them, we have to do the right things as well. So it's great to hear all of the people out there who are noticing that their horses need the support from us. They need the help. We can't just keep going sort of in this dogmatic approach. It's about understanding what their needs are, and it's so wonderful to sort of know that you're out there to help people, but also that people are having the awareness of understanding this other side to horsemanship, which is just such a fascinating area. So thank you very much for listening. There'll be more coming, of course, every week. Information from Mark, giving it to support everyone out there. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jenny.
If you want to nut out the root cause of any issues that you might be having, jump online and take a look at Mark's online training videos. This is your ticket to learning Mark's horsemanship yourself, designed for people just like you. And it has an array of incredibly useful content backed up with his support. So this is our personal invite to you. Take a look. It's free for the first week, and then just $20 a month if you want to continue. Cancel anytime.